Now, the other big news today, Donald Trump's flagship spending bill has passed its final legislative hurdle, squeaking through the US House of Representatives after 2 days of high political drama.
The yeas are 218, the nays are 214. The motion is adopted.
Well, in the end, only 2 Republicans voted against, following massive efforts to bring holdouts on side. It means that Mr. Trump's deadline of Independence Day on the 4th of July tomorrow has been met, despite a delaying tactic by the Democratic House leader. Hakeem Jeffries, who gave the longest speech in the chamber in recent memory, was finally finishing on his feet before the vote was pushed through. The bill, which includes sweeping cuts to taxes and federal programs, is now expected to add trillions of dollars to national debt. It goes to Donald Trump tomorrow to sign into law. Well, this is a scene live in Congress where we've just seen Speaker Mike Johnson. You can see him there in the centre of the screen. He has just announced in the last few minutes that the vote was passed, 218 yay, 214 nay, as they put it, and he then signed some documents. Let's just listen in quickly to what he's saying.
Sorry for all the chaos. That was kind of fun. A couple questions real quick. Yes. Yeah, so the question, you didn't hear it, it's kind of loud in here. The question was, how did we get the holdouts to yes? Here's the, so my leadership style is I try to be a servant leader. And as I mentioned earlier, I know what every member of this body, every member of this conference brings to the table. And the leader's job is to bring out everybody's best and get them to their highest and best use. And that takes some time. So what happened procedurally, not to get too deep in the weeds, but we got the Senate modifications to the House bill. Now, we're really proud because the big, beautiful bill, 85 to 90% of it is the original House product that we ourselves drafted over the course of more than a year. But when we went to the Senate, of course, as the other chamber is apt to do, they made some changes. They sent it over to us. We didn't have it for a lot of time. And so some members wanted to go really deep in the weeds on the changes, and they wanted to fully understand what those amendments were and how they would interact with the rest of the bill and how the administration would administer the new laws. And so there was a process there for a couple of days where we allowed that time for them to explore all that, to talk with leaders in the administration. President Trump was so generous with his time, answering questions himself. Vice President J.D. Vance was directly engaged. We had cabinet secretaries at a number of different federal agencies answering questions from members. Some of them even brought their agency attorneys in to get really deep in the weeds on the details. I knew as the leader that we would have to take the time to do that. And so some of that went into late into the night. And I was not going to make anybody, I was not going to demand anybody's vote or their position on the bill until they felt that they had exhausted that opportunity. So we did it, and that's how we got everybody yes. Yeah.
Obviously, you talked about the legislative process. You made a joke on the floor about how the White House legislative team practically lived here in the Capitol. Talk to me a little bit about how you got these members to yes. What concessions were made? We know it wasn't changes in the Senate bill.
Well, we're just going to watch those pictures and bring in our correspondent Arunade Mukherjee, who has been following events for us in the House as we waited for that vote, and it has just gone through, passing now back to the White House tomorrow. Arunade, it's a really huge moment for Donald Trump's domestic agenda. It potentially will be seen to seal his domestic legacy, surely.
Absolutely, and that's why there was a lot riding on this. While the bill was definitely put to test, but it was also a massive political test for President Donald Trump as well. His first 6 months as President of the United States, and a key piece of legislation that had a lot of his election promises. So it was very critical for him to ensure politically that he manages to get this through, one, and two, also manage to get those dissenting voices in order and also convince them, especially members of his own party, the ultra-conservative voices of the House House Freedom Caucus who had expressed worries and skepticism about what this bill means about national spending and deficit, to try and get them in line and get them to vote in favor of this bill. So it was a test for him as well, which is why soon after Hakeem Jeffries finished and we heard Speaker Mike Johnson come up and speak, he also gave a brief report card of sorts about President Trump's wins both abroad as well as on the domestic front. But that's where the situation stands at the moment. The voting is now over. He is expected to sign this bill into law at some point tomorrow. I just want to bring in for some more reaction Democrat Congressman from Arizona, Greg Stanton. Thank you very much, Congressman, for speaking to us here at BBC. Just tell me, you have voiced some concerns about what this bill might mean for your state. But having said that, it's now passed. What went wrong? Why couldn't you convince some of the criticism that you had about the bill?
Well, we convinced the American people because the more the American people learn about this bill, the less they like it. And this president and Congress are going to have to try to work very hard to convince people why ripping away health care from 17 million of our fellow citizens, family members, friends, co-workers, why that is good public policy, why ripping away nutrition assistance to 5 million of our fellow Americans is good public policy, or why the United States should turn its back on clean energy and being a leader on clean energy. We had made commitments to the world to do this, and now we have turned our back on it. In my state of Arizona, almost 70,000 jobs will be lost. We were a leader in clean energy. So the more the American people know about this bill, the less they like it. So my Republican friends, they could be cheering today. They could be high-fiving. The president's going to have a big bill ceremony tomorrow, I guess. But as time goes on, I think the American people are going to like this bill less and less. I was elected in 2018. That's right after Trump passed his first tax plan. It was an election that was based on health care because the Affordable Care Act was the key. And we walloped them in that election. I think the same thing is going to happen in the upcoming election.
Democratic Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, created that record of 8 hours, 44 minutes where he spoke. Speaker Mike Johnson soon after coming up and saying that, it was all about performance, whereas the Republicans were today all about results. How do you respond to something like that?
They passed a bill. So to their credit, they did pass this bill. The problem for them is what's in the bill. The bill such vastly disproportionately helps the wealthiest Americans and the largest corporations, whereas working class Americans are hurt by this bill because it rips away health care from them. Energy costs are going up. Clean energy is less expensive than other forms of energy. By getting us out of the clean energy business, energy costs are going up. After issue, the more the American people learn about the bill, the less they like it. So certainly they got it done today. The president's going to sign that bill tomorrow. And in the next election, they're going to rue the day that they pass this bill.
But the Republicans disagree. They argue, and their line of argument has been that they're trying to weed out corruption. They're trying to weed out fraudulent use of, these kind of healthcare policies. How do you respond to that then, in that argument?
Those are clever talking points. But when you cut $1 trillion from Medicaid, you're going well beyond that. Families are going to lose their health care. I come from a state in which there's already work requirements on Medicaid. And our governor just came out and said, our health care institutions can't handle a cut of this level. We know rural hospitals, which barely make money as it is, when you take away such a high percentage of the Medicaid population, they're going to go out of business. And when they go out of business, it doesn't just hurt the Medicaid population. Every resident of that community that relies on that hospital gets hurt. And almost all of those hospitals are in red districts, Republican districts. Again, they're going to rue the day that they voted for this bill.
All right, Congressman Stanton,
thank you so much.
Thank you very much, of the Democratic Party. They're from Arizona, speaking to the BBC, highlighting some of his concerns that we've been pointing out. But again, the Republican side of the story is that, look, this is good for America. This is good for working class Americans. They've done the mathematics, and they also say that as far as the healthcare concerns, what the congressman was pointing out, they are essentially doing this to weed out corruption, to weed out the fraudulent users of these kind of policies, and this is essentially a revamp of something better.
Okay, Arunade Mukherjee, thank you very much indeed for that. Just to let you know very quickly, Joe Biden, former president, of course, has also given his reaction, saying the Republican budget bill is not only reckless, it's cruel, slashing Medicaid, and as he puts it, just giving a massive tax break to billionaires. But we'll get more reaction to that legislation now finally passing. It goes to Donald Trump tomorrow to be signed into law. It has been celebrated, of course, by his Republican supporters.